Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How you doing today?
Well, I'm actually, I wasn't calling for Dave Tippett to be fired. I wasn't, like lots of people were and have been for some time. I wasn't in that camp, although I was thinking if they lost the next game, you can't wait too long to make a move. And it's been apparent in the last few games, something's gone. Like the problems with the team became bigger problems. They fell apart defensively. They started to leak grade A shots and 5 alarm shots at an alarming rate in the last 3 games, which includes a win over Washington, which they really didn't deserve. So, no surprise. I will say that, no surprise. Bruce, in this podcast, we're going to do a few things. We're going to both give our good thing and a bad thing about Dave Tippett overall. We'll look at which players are. We're going to look at the Jay Woodcroft and how he will change the team, and which players are going to benefit and which are not going to benefit from this move. Mm-hmm. Finally, we'll go through some of the Twitter comments and discuss those. So let's start with the good thing. Something like just overall, what the good things that you might say, if you were to defend Dave Tippett today about his reign as Oilers coach, what would you say, Bruce?
Well, I would talk in general terms about the massive improvement that Edmonton's specialty teams enjoyed during the first 2.3 seasons of his time here. Power play led the league both years and was soaring number one above everybody through November of this season, and which you could say, well, that's personnel and give credit, to the natural goal scorers and playmakers that Oilers can deploy on their power play. What shockingly was to me was how well the penalty kill came around after dismal performances for years. That the PK went in the top 10 in the NHL for 2 years, and I think they were as high as second one of those years and about 8th or 9th the other. And then this year they were like first in net efficiency, shorthanded goals minus power play goals against. They were that high up, and then suddenly both units collapsed in the last 2 months, and that was a big part of his downfall. But he had fixed that problem for an extended period of time, and it's still kind of hard to get my brain around how both units could fall apart at the same time. But that was a very strong part of his performance. At even strength, the team, they never even got to fully break even on at 5-on-5. But it was their special teams that at least made them playoff contenders, if not Stanley Cup contenders, which they definitely were not.
So my good thing is just to go back to where the Oilers were before he became the head coach. And we had been through 2 really rough seasons under Todd McLellan, and then halfway through McClellan's next season, or quarter way through, Ken Hitchcock took over. Had a good stretch and then cratered as well. Those Oiler teams under McClellan and Hitchcock were trending down. They were getting weaker and worse as it went along. Mm-hmm. Their points percentages in both years were abysmal. They had 78 points in 82 games in 2017-18, and then they had 79 points in 82 games in 2018-19. This is after making the playoffs in 2016-17 and advancing to the second round. That it would have been interesting to see what Todd McCullough can do in retrospect if Andre Sekera and Oscar Klefbom, his 2 best defensemen, hadn't been injured in that series against Anaheim and were never the same after that. I just think it was like, fundamentally altered the course of the Oilers franchise and brought on a lot of criticism, which perhaps in retrospect was overdone, when really it came down to you lose your 2 top lefty and you're going to be struggling for a while. So anyway, there was talk of that summer of, after Hitchcock was when they looked like they were going to replace Hitchcock. There was talk Connor McDavid was really restless from credible observers like Elliot Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
And so to stabilize the franchise, the decision was made to bring in very experienced people in Ken Holland and Dave Tippett. And I think some people would argue that Holland has actually been the lesser performer of the two. Dave Tippett fulfilled his duty much better than Holland did, and I'm not going to agree or disagree with that. I'm going to say that's a fair and reasonable critique, though, and
Yep.
that's, if anyone's saying that, they're not crazy. That's a fair comment. You can make a strong argument for that.
Yep.
So Tippett comes in and he turns things around almost at once. He takes a team which has been losing at a just losing way too much. And in his first year, in 71 games, shortened because of COVID, they get 83 points. They're well on their way to making the playoffs. I think they're second in their division when the season crashes down. The scoring chance differential, as we look at grade A shots to rate the team, it hadn't changed much, but the goal differential improved a bit. In the McClellan Hitchcock year, they were 2.84 and 3.3 against. Tippett's first year, they're 3.14 and just 3 against. So they moved from negative goal differential of a half goal a game to even, pretty much even, a little bit on the positive side under Tippett. Mm-hmm. So just a major and unexpected turnaround. People weren't expecting the Oilers to make the playoffs that year. It was really a down time, and people thought this might take a while. And he came in here and he got him going in the right direction right away. Then came COVID and that hideous, ridiculous playing around with Chicago where the Oilers just sucked. And, there's now talk that, Clefbaum was badly injured. Larson was not really keen to be there, perhaps. Like there's talk that, they weren't right. And they certainly didn't look right as a team. Anyway, so they come in, COVID's still around. They come into 2021 season and they're even better in the Canadian division. They get 72 points in 56 games, which is a 64% points percentage, up from 58%. And their grade A shots differential just takes off. They go to 11.6 grade A shots for per game and just 9.8 grade A shots against per game. This is after being underwater just a little bit the previous 2 seasons. And their goals differential suddenly is, instead of just being even, they're plus half a goal a game. So he's taken a team that was minus half a goal a game, and in 2 seasons, he's taken it to plus half a goal a game. Full goal difference. That is a huge achievement for Dave Tippett and his coaching staff and the players of the Edmonton Oilers. But again, Bruce, it's all down the toilet on a certain level because they go in and they lose 4 straight games to Winnipeg, and it feels like crap on a certain level. Even though those games are close, the Oilers don't come close to playing their A game in the playoffs when they need to do so. So it's 2 years of just actually pretty remarkable regular season improvement, and then playoff disappointment. So we're kind of wondering what's going to happen next. You could have glass half full, glass half empty. He comes in this season, and for the first 21 games, they're 16-5, best record in the NHL. Their goal differential at that point is 1 plus. I think it's about plus 1 goal a game, if you round it up. And
0.9, I think it was, but yeah.
0.9. So he's taken, from negative 0.5 to plus 0.5 to plus 0.9. Again, this is just like, wow, Dave Tippett. That is some coaching. So if anyone wonders why fans like me and others were kind of, maybe we shouldn't be so quick to fire Dave Tippett and give this guy a chance to turn things around, I think those are actually pretty strong indicators of someone who knows what the hell they're doing and righted this ship got it going in a hugely positive direction. What happens since then, though, is remarkable. The collapse that we've seen has been remarkable. So let's get into that's my good thing. Let's get into the bad thing. What's your bad thing about Tippett, Bruce?
Well, I was going to cite the 2 playoff collapses when the Oilers, as heavy favorites, won 1 game out of 8 and lost the last 6 in a row, but you kind of covered that off. So let's just get more into the collapse in recent times and what I've seen, that a team that seems to have lost the plot. And obviously, a lot of that is on the players, but a lot of it is on the mesh between the players and the coaching, and that something isn't clicking. And clearly, there was finally enough evidence for Ken Holland to take action. But their defensive coverage, David, and I'll cite you two recent games. Edmonton leading Washington 3-0 early in the game, and they're on the road, and they've already basically got enough goals to win, although it wouldn't hurt to get another one, obviously. And that game turned into a track meet. While Washington tried up the play, and back and forth they went, scoring chances galore, most of them for Washington. They do come all the way back and tie it, and then a gift from the hockey gourds, the Oilers got the shorthanded goal and squeak out the win just before the All-Star break. Well, the first game after the All-Star break, Oilers are the home team. Vegas comes in here. They get a 3-0 lead, and they absolutely put that game to bed, put the fans to sleep, but just take over. And Edmonton, it's just a matter of them working down the clock and eventually running it right out with a shutout victory. And just the contrast between how Edmonton handled a 3-0 lead on the road against a good team and how Vegas did the same. And I'm thinking, one of these teams has got what it takes to, you know, to win games, to play your advantage and win it. The Oilers, on one of the rare occasions that they did get the lead, didn't know what to do with it. And so that, but more generally, the defensive coverage, the wide open spaces, the Oilers would be one and done, and the other team would make one pass, and the next thing you know, there'd be some defenseman scrambling from the wrong side, trying to cut off some forward on the other team that's racing down the ice with the puck and with support. And it didn't seem like there's any sort of defensive system to take away the middle of the ice. And it's especially in the neutral zone. And it just was going from bad to worse. And with these two basically stinkers on their home ice on consecutive nights, finally forced the hand of Holland to take action.
Yeah, these last few games have been really bad. Their defense. They obviously have a defensive system, but it's completely broken down. They're giving up endless odd man rushes. Who knows what they're supposed to be doing? It's chaos in their own zone often, like with players. They're using obviously they're like F1, F2, F3, but they're always confused about who's F1 and F2 and F3 as far as I'm concerned. Like honestly, Bruce, they're not serious about it. They're not checking off like, oh, you are F1. Okay, you're going to stay there and do your freaking job in that role. They're shifting out and moving over, and come on, like they're not communicating. They're not a cohesive defensive team, and they were being ripped to shreds. And it started on the PK, the seam passes, and now it's moved to even strength and 2-on-1 rushes all the time. So this is a team that's progressively getting worse defensively. Now, our grade A shots totals show that to some extent. In the first 21 games, they were giving up 12.3 grade A shots per game. That's now moved to 13 grade A shots per game. So this is not a huge increase, right? But I think, and we haven't gotten into charting this, but I think next year we're going to, because I think it's important enough to do this. Within the grade A shot parameter, there's grade A shots which go in about 25% of the time, according to between 25 and 30% of the time, according to what we've seen over the years. That's the average, about 27, I think, 27%. We've been tracking these grade A shots. We've been tracking scoring chances for a long time, but grade A shots in particular for about 6 or 7 seasons. But the 5 alarm shots go in about, I'm guessing, about 40% of the time. And the Oilers, like last night, there were 6 or 7 5 alarm shots on Mike Smith. And you just, almost half the time they're going to end up in goals. And I like, we don't have the number because we just kind of track it. I'm starting to write it down, but we're not tracking it systematically, and we're going to do that. But I think there's been more of those kind of chances against in recent games that have been on net where, Mike Smith let in 4 goals last night, Bruce. All of those, I think, or almost all of those, were 5 alarm chances, like 3 out of 4. And he saved another 3 or 4 5 alarm chances. So Yeah, they fell apart. So my bad thing is that I guess it's the same as yours. It's this defensive deterioration,
Mm-hmm.
which it's maybe he can't control the goaltending, Tippett, but this is under his, he is the coach. They have
Mm-hmm.
goaltending coaches. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's some, the goaltenders are on him as well, and a lot of people are mad at him because he started Mike Smith in back-to-back games, and that was the end of him. But he really does have full control over the defensive play of the Oilers and the defensive mindset of the Oilers. And what I was noticing was from the top to the bottom of that roster, there was lack of defensive commitment and attitude on that team in that last handful of games. And going into this stretch of games, which is so compact and so where you can't afford to slide because you're in the battle for your playoff life, you can't have that. It's just not acceptable. And it was a big enough thing on top of this terrible recent losing streak where they went from a 76% point percentage to a 37% point percentage, like less than half.
Yeah.
They cut it in half. So on top of this losing streak, 2 months of losing, and then defensive meltdown,
Mm-hmm.
I think I can see why they made the move. I wasn't pushing for it, but last night it occurred to me watching the game, like,
No.
you can't have this. It can't go on. So
Yeah, well, I nearly named Tippett as my bad thing in the podcast last night, as I did in one podcast maybe 3 weeks ago during the depth of the previous losing slide. And I just thought those back-to-back stinkers on home ice, uh, when they don't have a full rink. And I mean, right now, of course, they had the restrictions and so on, but they're going to have to put fans back in that building, and they're going to have to deliver a better product, and just showing signs that they're aware and doing something about it, whether it's the right thing or not. And of course, I'm not sure we mentioned yet that they not only was Dave Tippett dismissed, but so too was assistant coach, defensive and penalty kill coach Jim Playfair, and that both Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson have been called up from the minors effectively from their similar positions to fill those two slots. So it's going to create a hole in Bakersfield, which is a minor concern, but the much bigger one is what's it going to do here in Edmonton. But I like the idea of it not just replacing one man, but bringing up a tandem that has been successful at the minor league level, and these guys, as you mentioned already, that have uh, experience with a lot of the Oilers players, and a knowledge of the guys that are in the system, and guys that honestly, I'm not sure Dave Tippett gave the full chance to a couple of these fellows that Woodcroft and Manson know pretty well, and they may figure out a better place to slot them, and it'll be a little bit less. Well, we'll go with the veterans. My gut says go with the veterans. Go with the veterans, and a little more. Let's add a little bit of youthful enthusiasm into the mix, and uh, I think that's something maybe we can talk about a little more.
Woodcroft, this is they had a chance to do this in 2014-15 when they had Todd Nelson as the interim coach.
Yep.
And suddenly Anton Lander's game took off
Yep.
at the NHL level. Nelson was familiar with the player,
Yep.
and his game,
Absolutely.
he just absolutely looked like an NHL hockey player.
He did.
Todd McLellan comes in, and Anton Lander's out the window. His game deteriorates. He never gets the chances that he got previously. And so you could have a debate. Should they have brought in a veteran coach like Mike Babcock? I don't know. Who
Claude
else?
Julien was one
Yeah.
name that was out there,
Yeah.
although he's in China right now.
You could have done the veteran coach thing,
Mm-hmm.
or you can do this with Jay Woodcroft.
Mm-hmm.
If Jay Woodcroft was a hockey player right now, Bruce, we'd be talking about him being ripe or overripe. He's been 13 years
Mm-hmm.
as an NHL assistant coach to Mike Babcock
Yes.
and Todd McLellan in hugely successful programs in Detroit and San Jose.
Yep.
He's certainly paid his dues and knows the NHL inside out. and here's the really cool thing, because he was an assistant coach under McClellan, he's already familiar with and has personally coached players like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Darnell Nurse, Chris Russell, Zach Cassian, and Jesse Puljujärvi. So many of the key leadership group, they know him. He knows them. He's coached them. It's not a total outsider. But the thing I like best about this is I think the new coaches when they've changed GMs and coaches, they've undersold some of the assets within the organization, and those players haven't gotten a proper chance. Jay Woodcroft knows the players in this organization probably better than any coach on earth. Like in terms of knowing all of these players, who they are, what they can bring, what they can't bring. So from Connor McDavid, from the very top player in Edmonton to the very lowest player in Bakersfield, he knows them all pretty much. There's a small group in Edmonton that he doesn't know. But other than that, he knows them all. So for players like Tyler Benson, Evan Bouchard, William Lagesson, Ryan McLeod, Cutter Yamamoto, and Stuart Skinner, Philip Broberry, now Dylan Holloway, he knows all of these guys, and they are definitely going to get a proper shake. If Woodcroft senses, for instance, that Broberry's ready for the NHL, that will happen. Might happen anyway because Duncan Keith's out, right? It's if he's out. Could be the perfect time, but we're not going to see players overlooked. If Tyler Benson doesn't make it now in the Edmonton Oilers, it's because he's not good enough, I think. No, it's not because the head coach wanted to go with Kyle Turris and Colton Sevier. It's because, So, and Devon Shore. Yeah, fair enough, Bruce. So I really like the move from that perspective. Although if they had hired a veteran coach, I don't know what I would have thought about it, because I would have thought Woodcroft got shafted, honestly, because he's had tremendous success in Bakersfield. Three out of 4 years, plus 600 hockey team, won the championship as it was last season.
Yep.
I would have felt bad for Jay Woodcroft, and that there was something wrong maybe with the Oilers organization, that they overlooked a talent like that and didn't give him an opportunity. So I'm excited about this young coach coming in, new generation of coach, former video coach, versed in analytics, coming in and having this opportunity. What are you, thumbs up or thumbs down on this?
Very much a data-driven guy as well, and he's got I'm thumbs up. I argued for Woodcroft getting the chance in Bakersfield in 2018 when Chiarelli cleared the decks of McClellan's assistant coaches, let a couple go at that time, brought in Gulitson and Playfair both, as I recall. But rather than dumping Jay Woodcroft, he gave him a fresh start within the Bakersfield organization. I thought that was a hell of a good idea at the time, and I've seen not a single thing since that made me think otherwise. It was one of Chiarelli's, in fact, it was his single best move in 2018-19 when his reign imploded in Edmonton. And Woodcroft, I hear him on the radio basically every week, and I just love his approach. And for starters, he's a gentleman. He's never once thrown a player under the bus that I've heard. He's always talking about the positive. This is what this guy needs. These are areas where he needs to improve, but he talks about the weaknesses of a player as a learning opportunity, as opposed to, and I'm not saying Tippett threw a bunch of players under the bus, but I like Woodcroft's way of personal handling. Now, whether that works at the same level with the bigger talents and presumably egos at the NHL level, we'll see. But it'll be a breath of fresh air, in my opinion. And he worked with some of these pretty important players at the transition level. Like he coached both Jesse Puljujärvi and Kari Yamamoto in the NHL as assistant coach. And then he coached both of those players as the head coach down in Bakersfield, because they were doing the yo-yo thing. I mean, it was Jay Woodcroft who coached Kari Yamamoto up to where he got recalled after Christmas in 2019 and came in and made a huge impact on the team at that time. And maybe that's a voice Kyle Yamamoto needs to hear again these days while he's struggling through what's been pretty difficult times and struggling a little bit to score and less popular in the fan base. There's a little positive boost for that guy. And Tyler Benson, man, oh man, if anybody knows what Tyler Benson can do, it's got to be Jay Woodcroft,
Yeah.
who had him down there for 3 years. I think he was the leading scorer on his team, two of the three, and he was, he knows what kind of player he is. Well, here in Edmonton, I think Tyler Benson's last game was January 5th in Toronto because they were short of players. He played well. He had a bunch of hits. He was in people's faces. Since then, nothing, not even a sniff of an opportunity as they've added, guys coming back from injury and so on. And I mean, last night the Oilers went with the exact same, wasn't it all 18 skaters? So in fact, all 19 guys. They changed the lines a little bit, but they didn't change any of the players after the stinker loss to Vegas. And guess what? They came out and they had another stinker loss with the exact same group of players. And meanwhile, you got these guys sitting up there in the press box, and Stuart Skinner. I mean, uh, I'll be surprised if Stuart Skinner's not the starting goalie tomorrow night. What do you think after what happened these last two nights?
Could well be, although, he's coming in and Mike Smith is the starter, and he might
Is he?
want to.
He didn't.
Yeah.
His last game he won was on October 16th,
We'll see.
4 months ago.
We'll see, Bruce.
He's
If
the
you're asking
starter.
me, if you're asking me who I think he'll start, I think he'll start Mike Smith.
Okay.
So let's
Stuart
have it. That'll be
Skinner
interesting.
won his last game in the NHL, and he hasn't lost a game for Woodcroft in the AHL all season long. I think that's a guy that's going to maybe get a different lease on life. And if they're looking to change things up a bit, I mean, a lot of these guys are locked in. It's not like they have the two lines of players that can be replaced because of contract situations and everything else. But I do think that the young players and guys like Ryan McLeod, who to Tippett's credit, he was working McLeod in and giving him different opportunities at different positions. But I think Woodcroft will reinforce that. And the young defensemen that are bubbling under, well, both Tippett and Dave Manson, or sorry, both Woodcroft and Dave Manson will be, in their corner. And I mean, obviously they have to perform on the ice, but I think they'll be given more opportunity to do what they can on the ice, and they will have the head start of knowing Woodcroft's system better than some of these old pros that Ken Holland has brought in that are filling the bottom six in Edmonton.
The graybeards, Bruce. The graybeards.
Graybeards.
I think.
Pros was last year's term. Yeah.
My prediction is we will see Benson in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see Benson in the lineup. We'll see Ryan McLeod, obviously. We may see Cooper Marody called up, or Seth Griffiths called up. I don't think we'll see Skinner in net. I see Woodcroft as being a traditional team guy where players have to earn their way. And he may think that Mike Smith has earned that first start under him based on past record. I think he's quite respectful of the pecking order on the team. Woodcroft, he's not. This isn't Dallas Aikens coming in here and kicking over tables and taking away the donuts. This is Jay Woodcroft coming in. He's a different breed of cat. He's a very calm and respectful person. Yes. So I'm gonna bet on Mike Smith. We'll see who's right. All right, Bruce. Let's go through what some of the Twitter reactions, and we'll each do 3. We've picked them out already. I can start because I've got mine lined up here. Okay. Athletic, and you can get yours ready. Athletic hockey writer Daniel Nugent Bowman, who does a fine job of covering the team for the Athletic. He just goes with a quote for his tweet, and it's from Ken Holland, and it says it's just a month ago, January 11th. Ken Holland quote: "You can't just keep whipping through coaches." Unquote. And some people have noted, I think this is Nugent Hopkins, is it his 11th coach in 12 years or 12th coach in 11 years? One or the other.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of coaches.
It's a lot of coaches. I think, I know you don't want to whip through too many coaches, but what is the shelf life of an NHL coach? People are making a lot of this in terms of Connor McDavid having, 4 coaches in 7 years, but the shelf life of an NHL coach ain't long. It's not long. This isn't that unusual for the NHL. And you know what else? Going up through minor hockey, These players, most of them had a new coach every year. They would have had a different coach, except when they got to major junior. Maybe when they got to an organization, they would have had a coach 2 years in a row. So it's not like suddenly, oh my God, I got a new coach. Like the world's gone haywire. It's completely what they're used to throughout their minor hockey career. It's what most of them are used to every second year or third year in the NHL. This isn't that unusual. They've essentially, like in terms of Connor McDavid, he essentially has gone from Todd McClellan with a brief interlude of Hitchcock to Dave Tippett. He's essentially had two coaches for the vast majority of his NHL career. This isn't crazy shambltrons. This is normal business in the NHL. So is it now Holland? The interesting thing about Holland in saying this, Bruce, as we know, he has never fired a coach in midseason. I'm going to give Ken Holland credit for going against his preconceived notions and what he's always done. You can teach an old dog new tricks. This is a different situation. This is the salary cap era where players have much more freedom of movement, where winning now is more important than ever, where you can't have as much patience as maybe you did in the past. You got to move, and he moved. I think I'm going to say thumbs up for Ken Holland and going against what he said. And just because you said something doesn't mean you have to stick to it if it's not the right idea a month later. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, well, who knows where the command came from? I mean, in my mind's ear, I can hear a late night phone call from Daryl Cates to Bob Nicholson saying, "This isn't good enough. The natives are restless that are paying to watch these games and seeing our team get thumped. We got to do something, Bob," and
It's
trickling down from there. But I mean, who knows? Is more my point.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bruce.
Not,
It's like, Kenny, we're not selling any Bobby Nix burgers, and we're not going to either if you don't start winning. So
yeah. So anyway, but it wasn't working, and going with a fresh voice with inside knowledge of the team over bringing in some complete outsider like, say, John Tortorella. Can you imagine bringing him in here? I mean, stuff would happen, but I think Woodcroft and Manson have an inside track on where to go, and they have an established system that many of their players know, and they have well, we'll see where that goes.
What's your tweet, Bruce?
Mine is from Oilers fan Mary Lonberg, who has a Swedish name, but she is a Finn. And she certainly follows. Yeah, there you go. Who follows the, we should ask her. Anyway.
The Bergberry controversy.
Yeah, she is a staunch supporter of Jesse Puljujärvi and also of Mikko Koskinen. Anyway, she says, "I'm thinking some irony here, or is it poetic justice? Mikko Koskinen kept Tippett working, but Mike Smith got him fired." And to elaborate on that, I think she's thinking of two specific games where Mikko Koskinen came up with his game of the year to beat Calgary on Hockey Night in Canada about 3 weeks ago to end the Oilers' 7-game losing streak, which was at the end of a homestand where they'd already lost the first two, and Koskinen basically stole that 5-3 win over Calgary on January 22nd, I think it was. So not that long ago. And then he went on the roll. He played every game but one in that 5-0-1 streak that seemed to have secured Tippett's job. And then Mike Smith came back, played one game, lost it. And then the very next night, he went in and told the coach he was starting. And coach said, "Okay, Mike, you're starting." And to an outsider like that one, thought, who's actually in charge here? Like, that's, starting a 39, any goalie in back-to-back goes against the current conventional wisdom in the NHL. But a 39-year-old guy who's been struggling with injuries all year, who actually was last night in the third period struggling to get up after going down to make saves, and he's right back in the net the very next night. I can guarantee you 100% that Stuart Skinner would have started last night's game
Yeah,
under any other coach, but
yeah.
certainly under Jay Woodcroft. And we can talk about tomorrow night with a day of rest, but last night, like that was, and was that the last straw that finally said, geez, this guy is so loyal to his veterans to a fault, and look where it's getting them. Nowhere. They're going nowhere but spinning their wheels.
Yeah, and the tourist signing was pinned. There's another veteran that was pinned on Tippett's recommendation, and certainly Tippett's stubborn use of the player um, backs that up. Bruce, I'm going to go to at B Curlock. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you pointed out this tweet to me. This is a longtime Oilers fan, but also someone who watches the Condors, and he's watching them very closely. So we're going to take
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with this tweeter, but you are, and so he has quite a detailed breakdown of the systems play that was used in Bakersfield this year. So we're going to run through it, and I'll stop a few times for us to discuss.
Sure.
And so he's saying that in Bakersfield, there's a much different structure than what we've seen at Edmonton. And quote, assuredly, they will go with a 2-1-2 narrow forecheck where F3 stays high in the middle of the ice. This will be a challenge for 97 and 29 McDavid and Draisaitl. McLeod will get this quick as he's the only one doing it now. So essentially, when they're forechecking, the last forward end will be high up on the ice. There's not going to be three men down low. So what that allows you to do, if the defenseman pinches, you have someone there right away to cover. And this has clearly been a massive problem on the Oilers, where they're not getting forwards covering the defenseman when they pinch, and it's been a mess. So now his suggestion that 97 and 29 will struggle with this, I think, is a fair comment from Kurlock. They are offensive dynamos who put offense first. And if they're asked to religiously defend and to do this, if they're F3, to just, no variation, man. You're on this team. You're going to cover. You're going to stay high. That'll be interesting. But I think it's the right move. He goes on to say, quote, the neutral zone will oscillate between 1-1-3 and 1-3-1. The choice seems to be opponent dependent. Again, this will be a challenge for McDavid and Draisaitl, but a massive help to the defensive core, who simply face too many large gaps currently and who don't have the foot speed to handle the attacks. A very adept comment. And I also agree with his comment about McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, if you're going to play a more systematic form of defense, it's going to be all the offensive players have to rein it in and put that first, put that ahead of their hunger for point scoring. Now, they might have a receptive McDavid and Draisaitl right about now, because they're not having much success, and the team is getting crushed defensively. Yeah. So now is the time. If you're going to bring in a defensive system, Jay Woodcroft, don't wait. This is the moment. You got the hammer. Use it and work with these players, all of them, from the top to the bottom of the roster. Any thoughts, Bruce?
Yeah, I wish they had some practice time like they would have had if this move had taken place after, say, the Toronto game or the Ottawa game. But now Woodcroft arrives tomorrow and the game is tomorrow night. So it's going to be a little bit hard to implement. But I'd like to hope, and surely this isn't much of a reach, that McDavid and Draisaitl, great offensive players as they are hungrier for wins than they are for points. And if playing in a different structure allows them to actually have the puck more, they'll see the benefits of it. And it's, Bruce Kurlock, his comments about the decor facing too many large gaps and not having the foot speed to handle it is just absolutely bang on point. We see that every night.
We do. Tyson Barrie racing to get back, struggling to get back. CC struggling. Evan Bouchard. It's just endless. Okay, he goes on to say the D zone will be most fascinating because Woodcroft and Manson expect center support low at all times. This runs completely counter the Oilers' D zone, who use a first man back approach that devolves into a swarm quite often. He predicts. He says Draisaitl will be excellent. McDavid will be challenged. I think his analysis is correct. And I talked about this earlier, where they're right now the Oilers are constantly switching off. They go, F1 should cover it, but F1 then moves out and covers the point. Like, it's just a mess of people moving around, and they're not making the proper reads. It's not working, whatever they're doing now. So if they have a system where it's actually fundamentally the center's job to get back there and cover, That's a huge change for the Oilers. And like it's it's a simple thing. It's a clear message to McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, McLeod, Ryan. Like, you're the man. You are the third defenseman in front of that net. That's your area. You will cover it, and you're
Mhm.
going to help out these D men. And it's fundamentally your responsibility. So no, Leon, you're not going to cruise out to the point and let Cutter Yamamoto try to cover down there. That's really what we want you to do, and help the D men advance the puck. I don't agree with his assessment, though, that McDavid will be more challenged than Draisaitl. I think McDavid might actually really benefit from a clear instruction. He's quite a determined hockey player, and I think he'll listen. Draisaitl is more. I see him as more of a freelancer on defense who likes to read the play and shift around.
Mhm.
Um, and if he's asked to play a more disciplined role, he can definitely do it. And I think it would be a really good idea if he did do it. But it's not his style of play. He's a very smart hockey player who likes to do things his way and read the play, and he's good at it. He makes steals. It's more of a gambling style of play. That said, and it's successful. I mean, he's a hugely successful even strength player. He's the best even strength player on the Edmonton Oilers. So any criticism I make of him is with that in mind. Like, I have
Right.
utmost respect for Leon as a hockey player. This would be different for him, and it will
Mhm.
be interesting to see how he handles it.
Mhm. You think
Um,
we'll ever see them both on the same line going forward, or will that become a thing of the past, or will he still have those little focus moments like post penalty kill or last minute of a period where he does it, or will he just simply say you're together on the power play and otherwise you're not?
I think we'll see them together. He was here. Woodcroft was here when
Yeah.
McClellan had them together and had great success.
Mhm. True.
And they do have success. When they were together with Yamamoto on a line last year, and it wasn't a huge sample size, but it was more than 100 minutes. They had an 82% goals for percentage. You can find chemistry with McDavid and Draisaitl on at the same time,
All
but
kinds of
it
chemistry.
has in the past confused them on who's supposed to cover this defensive slot, and we've had this chaotic situation as a result. I mean, I just think this is a fundamental thing to sort out on the team, and well, maybe Woodcroft will simplify it enough, which I think is necessary, that
Yeah.
is going to start to work better, because it was not working, wasn't working. Um, I'll just he talks about using skill players on the PK
Hmm.
more often, which would be like he's saying that Benson and Marody and Broberry play the PK in Bakersfield. And I'll just leave off with his last comment. He says, "quote Woodcroft is a data guy. He started as a video coach, and he speaks a lot about his analytics preferences. I expect big changes in player development, time on ice, and line and D pairing matching based on his analytics focus. This will take time, but it will be a sea change for certain." Unquote. So that's interesting. We'll see what analytics Woodcroft does. I mean, we know McClellan did scoring chance data, um, probably, and we know that Tippett did the same thing. So I think they had a good handle analytically, actually, on their own roster. But there's all kinds of different methods. There's all this new data that it's confidential, that we don't know about, that NHL teams are privy to. The Oilers are not a heavy analytics team. I think that's obvious and fair to say. But this will please a lot of fans that he's more into that, more of a new wave coach.
Hmm.
Bruce, what's your
Yeah,
next?
he's
Go
going to
ahead.
win friends by being more accessible, I think, than we've seen from Tippett, just in his manner, Whitcroft, and that's going to be a welcome development, I think, as well.
What's your
Uh,
next one, Bruce?
yeah, I
Jay
had it, and then
Fresh.
yeah, I'm just trying to find him in here. Oh,
He's towards the bottom. Want me to read it and you can comment on it?
uh, I'll read the other one, and then I'll get
Okay.
to Jay Fred's Capitals fan. Patrick C, or Patrick with two C's, at patio_36. Dave Tippett didn't trade away Ethan Bear. Dave Tippett didn't sign defensemen to albatross contracts. Dave Tippett didn't pay a premium for an old Duncan Keith. Why is he being punished? So I think that's an outsider's good question. I think we've already covered some of the reasons why he's been let go. But he does ask good questions and makes good observations. As Dave Tippett had, he's the chief cook, but he has to work with the ingredients that he was provided with. And, there are weaknesses on the roster, the players available to him that are attributable more to the person who went out and shopped for the ingredients and brought them into Tippett's kitchen. And so I guess the overriding question is letting go of the coach the be all and end all answer here, or does the answer lie further up the food chain?
Yeah, we don't know who Adam Larson said he wanted a clean slate, and maybe a different coach or GM could have persuaded him to stay, but Holland and Tippett are pretty affable people, I think. So maybe Adam Larson was just going, because that's the biggest loss. Like, that was the hammer to this team. If they had Larson and they had signed Cody Ceci instead of Barry, if you had a right D of Larson, Bouchard, and Ceci right now, this is a different hockey team.
Yes.
No
Bruce, question. And the response to the Larson departure seemed knee-jerk, and it seemed like it caught Ken Holland by surprise that Larson was leaving. And I mean, maybe Larson really did make his decision at the last minute, but it sounded like it was a decision that came from his heart. And those conversations should have been had. And that happened late, and the decision said, well, if we lost Larson, we can't possibly let both of our right D. Let's re-sign Tyson Barrie to a 3-year deal at a nice big raise because he had a good year for us last year, when they've got another, offensive right shot defenseman bubbling under on an entry level contract. And now they've got like sort of obvious weaknesses on right defense in the defensive zone. And I mean, who could have seen that coming? I think probably a lot of people.
All right, I'll go to my final Twitter quote. It's from Oilers fan Dill at DL Hockey 13. He says, "Oh my God, Tippett and Playfair out, Manson and Woodcroft in. We've all been begging for this for a month. Soak it in, Oilers fans. Rare wins like this don't happen much." So I think there is a huge faction of Oiler fans that are feeling this right now. They're just really ecstatic that a change was made. And part of hockey is pleasing the fans. I mean, it's a business. So on that level, I mean, you can't make your decisions just based on that, and they don't make them just based on that. But it is part of the decision, and we'll see if this turns out to work out. What's your final quote, Bruce?
Yeah, Dill's he's a good follow. Like, he's a pretty harsh critic, but I think he makes his criticisms based in information, and he draws conclusions. Mine's from hockey analyst Jay Fresh at Jay Fresh Hockey. He says, many legitimate reasons to want a coaching change that stem back long before December. But it's pretty much undeniable that Tippett got fired for PDO, as so many coaches have. Tippett, the victim of honest shooting and goaltending. Sometimes it takes the irrationality of puck luck to make the overall rational change, though. And he's certainly right. He went on to detail elsewhere that since December 2nd, which was the dividing point of the Oilers season, that the team ranked somewhere in the bottom 3 in the league in both shooting percentage and save percentage, and also in both goals scored, well, below average or below expected, and goals saved below expected, like at both ends of the ice. So their shots just didn't match up with the actual goals results. And you and I have seen this. I mean, obviously, in losing their last 12 home games by a combined 47 goals to 23, they got outscored 2-1. They did not get outshot 2-1. In fact, I'm not sure they got outshot at all in those games, but they were chasing those games. And so some of this data is, I mean, it's important, but it also needs context. like score effects is a huge thing, and normally you expect that's something that's going to balance out. Well, when you're down 2-0 by the 3-minute mark of the first period, again and again and again, 0-2 already. Oh, that happened. And it just hasn't seemed to be getting any better. That they're haven't been. They've had some bad luck, sure, but they haven't been ready at the start, and they haven't been. The team needs a new focus because they lost the old one.
Yeah, it's interesting because according to our numbers, they're still getting a good number of grade A shots per game and more grade A shots per game than they're giving up. But they should be giving up about 4 goals a game according to our numbers, and I think they are. They're giving up about 4 goals. So that's right on track. But they should be scoring about 4 goals a game. And what they've run into, I think, is 2 things: bad puck luck, it's just not getting the right bounces, and that can happen over periods of time, and hot goaltending on the other teams. They've been facing really strong goaltending. Seems like they're just, the other goalies come up with great saves after great saves, and we saw it again last night with Marc-Andre Fleury. So I think Jay Fresh makes a good point here. And again, what we don't know, and he doesn't know unless he's got stats that we don't have access to, is the exact, like when you look at velocity, shot placement, everything that goes into a shot, into what percentage of the time it should go into the net. That's a hard thing to track. And just the stats available to the public, they don't track that. A lot of the grade A shots, they don't, you don't even have to hit the net to be credited with a grade A shot under some systems. In ours, you do. So, and some of the shots that are credited with grade A shots under many publicly available analytics systems don't measure the velocity of the shot. They can't see screens or not. They don't know if there's a screen or not. There's all of these factors, tips. Was it a big tip or a little tip? Like, is it, because some tips, the puck doesn't move at all. It's just, it hits a stick, but it goes right at the goalie anyway. And then others, it moves dramatically. So this is a very hard thing to measure. We try to do it between us as best we can, but it's even our measurement is fairly crude. There's essentially 2 types of shots. There's grade A shots, which are above 25% according to what we see, and then there's everything below that. So, it's kind of hard to gauge exactly what's going on, but at least according to our data, where we try to look at velocity, screens, tips, all of these different factors about what makes a good shot and a bad shot, the Oilers are seriously underperforming offensively compared to what they're actually producing on the attack in terms of grade A shots. They're just snake bitten, and they are facing hot goalie after hot goalie after hot goalie. And Dave Tippett could be cursing that bad luck, because it is bad luck.
Yeah, well, that PDO has been just brutal. I mean, their shooting percentage is like half of the other team's shooting percentage in a lot of games, and you'd think with the high profile offensive stars that the Oilers have, that shouldn't be a problem, that they should be creating better than average scoring chances, and that they should actually have a positive PDO, but that just hasn't been working. And I mean, part of it is, that their top guys are slumping to some extent. And I mean, some of that's chicken and egg. I mean, are they slumping because, they're not getting the bounces, but clearly they're off their game, I would say, that especially their 2 big guys for a while now, and especially McDavid, to be frank. But it's gone on too long. I mean, this slide happened on December 5th. This is now February 9th. And, and there was a brief correction. But even in that time, like they beat Montreal, they were lucky to beat Washington. They were very, the goalie stole the win against Calgary. They had to come back hard to beat Vancouver when they were down a few players. And, there was no sort of convincing, hey, we won this game because we're better than those guys, full stop, unless you want to talk about the Montreal game, in which case being better than Montreal this year is a very low bar.
Well, Bruce, I think we've covered the ground here, the map and the territory somewhat. So let's leave it there, and let's see what happens next. Thanks for, unless you have a final comment, any final thought that you want to make that you haven't.
Just that Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson have a lot of work to do and not a whole lot of time in which to do it. Like with 40 games in 81 days. There's not a lot of practice ice in there. You know, when you get 2 days off between games, almost certainly one of them is going to be a CBA mandated day off. And so they're going to have to do a lot of their work in the room, video meetings and that sort of thing. But more power to them. I mean, they've proven themselves. The coaches have as NHL ready, I think. And here's their big shot. Go for it. Good luck.
I just wonder with systems play. I mean, these players have all played many systems through the years. They've played from numerous coaches at a high level. Every single one of these players, they've played probably, a dozen different systems. Like they just so, and it's something that it's, you can show on a board. You cover here when the puck's there. It's not. You don't have to do it on the ice necessarily. So, it's something that I think they can institute fairly quickly. It's just a matter of then working with having the players do it, having them believe in the system that they've brought in and execute it. And that's the challenge. I don't think it is actually in learning the system because it's not rocket science. I mean, there's only so many things you can do on the ice with hockey players. And what they're talking about isn't that complicated. But what is hard is getting people to actually do it and to do it well and to make within that system then to make the correct reads because your head's on a swivel and you're alert and it's your job one and you understand that. That's the challenge. I think it's more of an attitudinal shift in terms of defensive play, which is going to be needed. And we'll see if he can get it. We'll see what his persuasion skills are in terms of dealing with these elite hockey players.
Yeah, buy-in from the leadership group is the single biggest question, I think. If Woodcroft can get that, this team does have the talent and wherewithal to turn things around. But they need a new approach, and they're going to have the opportunity now to get one. And hopefully, their big star players will buy in and set the example and lead the way. That's what the Oilers need them to do.
Completely agree, Bruce. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens next. It's all part of the fun. This is tomorrow night. Thanks for talking, Bruce.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.